Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Got a big show today as the NFL playoffs are underway. And once again, Wentz. Philadelphia spent so much money on him, he didn't even participate in the playoffs. I tried to do some stat research on it. And Matt, the way I break it down is now, if you were worried about getting fired because of your playoff performance, just don't ever play in the playoffs. Then you don't have to worry about it.
It's a pretty smart play.
You go ahead, you get your backup. The backup wins the Super Bowl. Everybody loves you for it for some reason. And he comes in, and I know people are putting the heat on Jadeveon Clowney, which if you listen to the show before, Matt and I are big fans of Clowney going back to his time with the head ball coach at USC. I was worried about him being a bust, but he's kind of fit in as a role player, and without much talent, maybe he's not as dynamic as what people expected coming into the NFL, but he stuck around, and that's saying something. I don't think there was any intent with that play, because if you're a fan of the Eagles, you have to think, what is my quarterback doing? That he's like half diving in a playoff game anyway. Like, who does he think he is, Steve Young? I watched the play. I know Clowney kind of went low. Clowney looked like he ducked his head completely. And that's why I give him the benefit of the doubt. Because if he was really trying to hurt him, he could have speared him. But it looked like he was trying to tuck his head all the way around. And for people not on video, it doesn't make any sense of me trying to do the motion. You won't be able to see it anyway. But he tucked it underneath, almost like he was trying to pull up, but he was in midair. I mean, you almost expect the quarterback not to go down like that. And the reason he did, he put his arm down. I texted you right away. I said, he needs to sign up for some judo classes or something and learn how to fall. What kind of idiot falls on his throwing arm and like in an awkward angle? Like that could have very easily been a Ben Roethlisberger type elbow injury. You should just tuck your arm, play it safe, do whatever you need to do, and just fall and roll. Never put your throwing arm. It goes back to the old movie Bull Durham, where he tells that guy, if you get into a bar fight, don't use your throwing arm. Like, that's common sense stuff. That should be day number one. If I was the coach or the GM, I would have a talk with him and be like, what are you doing? Like, come on, let's get you some lessons on how to fall, how to slide correctly. Because, I mean, let's be honest, there are a lot of quarterbacks out there that don't even know how to slide. So if you want, you can pay Matt and I. We can do like a one-on-one consultation with you. If you're an up-and-coming quarterback, definitely reach out to us. We can put together a camp where we teach you these things. Right, Matt?
Absolutely, not a problem.
What did you think of that play?
It was bad that he got injured, but I think when it comes time for the playoffs, I don't think that. I think the competitive part of Carson Wentz didn't say, "Oh, I need to learn how to fall." It was, "I need to make a play, move the ball," and it just all year, for as fragile as we've suspected him to be, he's survived. And it almost felt like too good to be true. That this was going to be an opportunity, because right now he's always going to have that asterisk beside him. Yes, he is a Super Bowl champion, but he did it with Nick Foles as the quarterback, and so it wasn't his team per se, and so you're going to have that asterisk beside his Super Bowl win, because part of it belongs to him, but part of it was someone else getting the job done. So I think he's trying to push to kind of get that monkey off his back. And by continuing to get himself injured, it's not helping his case.
I just think, how many times have I seen like Ben Roethlisberger fall forward like that? 0 times. He seems like he's always taking the lazy man's way out. And to play for almost like 40 years, you have to do that. I mean, it's nothing against Wentz. You have to learn it. But even Aaron Rodgers, I was thinking, how many times did I see him like do like an awkward fall / dive? And I'm not really a big fan of Aaron Rodgers. If you listen to the show, you know, I'm always ripping on him. But I thought these are guys that have been around for a long time. Tom Brady, you've never seen Tom Brady do weird things like that. It was almost like you said, he's trying too hard. But like that's something a rookie quarterback should do. I would expect that out of Baker Mayfield. but not Wentz. Like, you're the guy. They basically sat down in the front office and decided you were the guy. They let Nick Foles go. And people were triggering me during the game anyway. They texted me, "Oh, yeah, where's Nick Foles?" Like, they expected him to be on the sideline. And I thought, oh my God, you already set me off. That's too much. I couldn't handle it. I didn't want the Eagles to win. They didn't. So, all around, happy mood after that game. I'm sorry he got injured, but at some point, it's going to be the responsibility of him and not the defender. The defender really can't do anything in that situation. That's my read on it. Like, what else do you want him to do? Not fall? I mean, he's going full speed. He was kind of tripped up from behind. He was diving for extra yards. He put his arm down like he was going to stay up. If he would have stayed up and Clowney pulled up, then what? Runs for like 10 more yards?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, so like, if you're Clowney, how do you know he put his arm down like he was going to keep running. He just botched the entire thing and then fell. Like, if he could have regained his balance on his arm, he would have kept running and Clowney would have been in the right to take a shot at his legs, which is what he was doing. So I see no intent.
No, and I would agree with that. I think when you look at it overall, I don't think that the intent was there. I just think it was a freak play that resulted in an injury, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I hate that that's the narrative now. It's almost like it's a scapegoat for Philly fans. Not the fact that they barely made the playoffs. Like, they deserve to lose. I didn't have them going any further. So I don't see how people can take shots and say, well, they could have won with Wentz in there. Yeah, they could have. They also could have won double-digit games in the regular season with him in there, but you didn't see that happening either. So that's not the be-all, end-all for that game. They're just lucky the Seahawks let them hang around. The other game, let's get into the other NFC game. Actually, before we go on, do you have anything else from that game?
No.
Marshawn Lynch, though. he like, no other team picks him up, Matt. He came in, he just was destroying out there on the goal line. Look, what are you doing? Look at the Patriots. Patriots were on the 1 yard line. They ran the ball 3 times. They didn't get it. Beast mode. He was available.
Well,
why not stash him?
When I was watching that, it kind of reminded me of when New England would do that. Where, like, late in the regular season, they would sign LeGarrette Blount, or they would sign some other big bruising running back that, like, hadn't got a lot of carries through the year. And when, like, there's a lot of talk right now in the NBA about load management and having guys rest and not play and trying to save their legs and wear and tear. I think we were kind of getting onto that last week on our show, but I think there was something too. Lynch is out all season and not taking the hits and not banged up, and then he steps in and he's relatively fresh. I'm more surprised that he was physically ready to go playoff ready.
You don't have to be. They weren't giving him 40 carries. I mean, anyone could just come off the street and run a couple times. I'd assume he's not letting himself go completely.
Oh, I don't know that anyone off the street could do that. I see a lot of people on the street. Not everyone is built for that. Although that would be an awesome TV show. Just a bunch of players that recently retired and like, hey, try to score a touchdown and just watch them just get absolutely destroyed.
Oh, man, you have that happen for some teams. They just pick up anybody that used to play. Look at some of the quarterbacks that are still getting called up. Who was quarterbacking for the Eagles, Matt? Was it McCown? How long has he been in the league?
Because they said to him, is this your first playoff game? He's like, I was on Carolina in 2008.
Yeah, I remember that. He backed up Jake Delhomme? That's how long ago it was. So for people out there that remember that, and they get killed by Arizona that year. Was that the year that the Steelers won the Super Bowl? Look that up. My memory could be wrong, but it's around that same time.
They lost to New England.
They could have. I think they went to that Super Bowl earlier, though. I want to say the one they lost to the New England was like 2003. I think they were the favorites in the NFC the year the Cardinals made it and the Steelers beat them. But that's been such a long time ago that my years might not be exact. But, I mean, honestly, that's who they bring in to that game. The Seahawks have beast mode. They bring that in. But the Eagles had no plan. So we'll see what happens next year. We're going to get into that because we have Cowboys on here for the coaching changes we're going to get into in a little bit. Let's go to the other NFC game. Offensive pass interference. Again, the controversy, pass interference involving the Saints. And I watched this about 100 times because I wanted to get all the views. So I broke it down. People were asking me about it during the game. What did I think?
Before you go any further, why would you do that? The NFL only looks at it from one angle, maybe two. You should be objective like the NFL and just use two angles and then shoot it right from the hip, because that's what they have to do. They don't have access to all of the angles. Why would you do that? And then talk condescendingly about the NFL.
But I looked at it because I wanted to have some knowledge to try to see where they were coming from. And I actually see their point. I honestly didn't see enough to call offensive pass interference. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, my initial reaction was that there wasn't pass interference. And then the more I was kind of thinking about the way that they were calling it during the preseason, and they were saying about how any of those pushing off type penalties that they were really enforcing hard during the preseason, it would have been. So I think it was just one of those that they let the play stand because of the hand fighting that was going on back and forth.
But this is my reason, and I think I have a good point here, that a lot of people, once they see it this way, they'll be able to say, okay, I see the point. Because in the NFL, you're not allowed to face guard like you can in college. So a lot of the hand fighting stuff that you see in college, they call the pass interferences a little bit different. On that play, the defender, when he extended his arm, if the defender would have turned and looked for the ball, I think that would have exaggerated the push off enough that they would have called pass interference. He never turned his head around. So if anything, you could have called defensive pass interference on that play because he didn't make a play on the ball. He had no idea where it was. After they were hand fighting, that was the NFL's line. They said, well, they were hand fighting because that's the only thing the defender did. He got pushed. He just put his hands down. Why not at least turn at the last second and try to throw your hand up to at least knock the pass down? I don't understand where he was coming from. I know he wasn't in good position. He got beat. The NFL was rewarding the tight end because he beat the defender. I saw a lot of defensive backs coming out and saying, well, they don't know how the defender is supposed to play that play. How about you stay closer to your man and turn your head? Because I think if he turns his head, when he turns his head, as soon as the receiver pushes, if he turns his head, I think that spins his body enough that they do call offensive pass interference. But he fought through the push. When he fought through that push and it continued to knock the other arm down, there was nothing the NFL could do because it looked like the push-off didn't affect him at all. He was just in bad position. He wasn't doing anything. So realistically, could you call that on the defender or on the offensive guy? What did the defender do there to make a good play? He did nothing. You can watch it in slow-mo too, and you really see where, okay, he got pushed. He should have known enough that whenever he's getting pushed, the ball's going to be there. Turn your head. That's my advice to any young guy out there. I know it's a little bit different in college. They tell you not to do that because you can just face guard guys as long as you're not pushing back. But still, put your hands up. As soon as he pushes off and looks up, you know the ball's about to be there. Make a play on it. Make a play on it and you're probably still playing. Well, I know it was overtime or whatever, but still. I got to give benefit of the doubt with the NFL on that one because I agree with them. Looked like hand fighting. The defender really sold it as hand fighting. He didn't make a play on the ball. So anyone that's complaining about it, last year's, we talked about it extensively. You can go back and listen to that show. I think I was on the thing of not pass interference either against the Saints. But it's not that I hate the Saints. I just think that when you're in the heat of the moment, they said that they looked at the replay. From that replay, if you're the NFL guy, they said they called it so fast he only saw the one angle or whatever. Like, what else is he supposed to look for? You look for those things. Did the guy make a play, equal rights to the ball? He didn't. Case closed.
But I think the officials are doing it the right way right now, where they're allowing the plays to develop, and they're forcing the officials in the booth that have different camera angles to be able to call it in and adjust the call in the field. When you look at, there was a play earlier in the game where it was suspected that Dalvin Cook fumbled. and the Saints had returned it for a touchdown. They ruled it on the field that it was a touchdown. They allowed replay to go back. They saw that Cook's knee was down and that the ball came out after the fact, and they were able to turn that back around and adjust it appropriately. Had they have called him down immediately, where it wasn't a fumble, it could have affected the Saints. So it helps to be able to have the officials to review it, make sure that they get it right, and they're allowing some of these calls to happen. I'd rather see it done that way than to have it be where they call a pass interference one way or the other, and then it ends up affecting, making it so that the game is basically given away, as opposed to having the teams playing competitively for it. Plus, it was a play during overtime. Both teams had an opportunity to win it, and they didn't. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's surprising because the Saints, everyone were picking them to go far. I think I even had them in my 4 teams that you could bet on and just try to get your winner from the NFC if that was the route you were going to go as a gambler. And they choked once again. And it made me think, a lot of people were saying that the Cowboys should have went after Sean Payton. And I thought, why? Sean Payton has a Hall of Fame quarterback, Drew Brees. He has exactly 1 Super Bowl victory. 1. He's the same as Mike McCarthy, which we're going to get into later in the show. I don't see any benefit to having him over some other coach that also won 1 Super Bowl. What has he done besides get thrown out of the playoffs early? It's almost like, okay, yep, here we go again. First round exit. At least whenever Tomlin was making it all those years, they were losing to like New England or someone every year. It wasn't like they were getting bounced right away till later seasons, but we'll get into that. My AFC ones. You had my big thing on AFC night was end of game situations, because I watched the Patriots, and for one, everyone always talks about how Bill Belichick is a genius, but some of his end of game stuff just didn't make sense on Saturday. It was almost like they were putting themselves in a bad position, and I know you're on your defense, and you're going to put pressure on them, and you think, okay, we're going to punt it, and our defense is going to get a stop because that's your thing. You're the coach, the defensive genius, but you hadn't been stopping them all game. You let them get like 6 minutes left when you were punting from like midfield or wherever they were. And then you barely get the stops. You get the ball punted to you on like the 1 yard line or whatever it is with like however many seconds, 20 seconds or so. You're down by 1. Why not just take the safety? You wasted so much time running a play that eventually turned into a pick 6 because it was tipped up into the air. Just take the safety and kick the onside kick. The odds of you recovering an onside kick are better than you scoring from the 1 yard line. And then all you have to do is complete 1 pass and kick a field goal to tie it. Like, come on. I think they need to have a guy in the NFL that just tells them, like, yo, just take it, try to get the ball back. You're not going to score on this play, which then they didn't. Then they kicked the ball off, and by that time, they were trying to lateral and all kind of stuff. They had 0 chance to win that game after that play. Just have them snap it right over your head. You have enough time to get an onside kick because then the clock doesn't stop, or the clock doesn't start. Who was the coach from the other team? Vrabel. He played it great whenever they went for 2. Because if you get the 2-point conversion, I know they didn't get it. That's the dagger. Why? Just take charge and try to win the game. Belichick wasn't doing anything. I thought they should have just ran Henry because he was just running them over at that point. I thought they should have just man-balled it in. But whatever, go for it. That's good for me. And I looked at Belichick and I just thought, do they need a guy on the sidelines that's just running end-of-game situations? Because I know Sean Payton, some people were calling him out for his time management. But I feel like they need some guy that's just out there that breaking down the situations, because you can look at the odds. You have better odds to get an onside kick than scoring from the 1 yard line with like 20 seconds left. I mean, I know you just needed a field goal or whatever, but still you had no timeouts. What were you going to do effectively in that amount of time? If you get a throw to the middle of the field, you're going to run down and possibly spike it and take like a 70-yarder?
But I think that's also, in years past, that was, even being pinned that deep, that was a Brady specialty because everyone would try to either bring tons of pressure or they would sit way back in coverage and he would dink and dunk it right down the field, get him in the field goal range and fire that out. I think this was finally a year where New England, had their lack of skill positions exposed because I think they had a lot of rookies that really didn't end up contributing a whole lot this year. Plus, when you look at, they tried to pick up Antonio Brown and that didn't play out. They really didn't have a lot of playmakers. It reminded me of one of the earlier years when New England and Indy were going at it almost every year, where Brady went to throw. He was throwing a pass to the outside, and it hit the receiver right in the chest, and they dropped it. It's like, well, he can't catch it too. They have to have some skill guys. It was like after that playoff run, New England went out and they brought in a pile of skill guys, running backs and wide receivers, and address needs in the draft, and they were able to get themselves back into the Super Bowl contention. I don't know how aggressive they're going to be with the potential trial stuff with Robert Kraft and his possibility of going to jail. That may put, that may shift some priorities. That may limit the amount of money that they're willing to spend if he's going to end up being tied up in court cases for a while.
Well, what do you think? Do you think Tom Brady returns? That's the next thing I have on here.
I don't know. I've heard a lot of speculation. I think that he'll probably come back, but I'm wondering. We've talked about this with other quarterbacks. How much longer is it good for him to go, like without tarnishing what he's been able to do?
Well, that's basically what he has to decide. He could have ended it last year and went on top like John Elway. But does anyone really remember like the Joe Montana years this far ahead now? Does anyone even remember him playing for the Chiefs? Unless you were that old, like younger kids don't know that. They just know that he won a bunch of Super Bowls. And I feel like if he goes and spends 1 year somewhere, that's what they're going to think. Like Peyton Manning, I would be shocked if a lot of people our age like remember his Broncos years. Like if they were just casual fans, most of them are going to be like, yeah, he was the old Colts quarterback, right? He won a Super Bowl there. And I feel like that's what Tom Brady's always going to be remembered for. So if he picks his spot, like Peyton Manning did, he might have one or two more good years left.
When Manning went to Denver, it was clear that they had the talent everywhere else, and the only thing that they were lacking was quarterback, and they just needed that field general. What team right now do you see that is just missing the field general?
That's what I don't know. I've been talking about the Steelers as like a joke, bringing Tom Brady in, because I know that would make everyone's head explode. But realistically, looking around the league, I don't even know where you could go. Like everyone talks about the young weapons that the Browns have. They don't have a good defense, and they don't have a good front office or anything. Like it would be suicide for him to go there. I don't even know, looking around the league, is it the Bears? Like, do you have to look at a team? Is it the Vikings? Would they give up Kirk Cousins just to go? Like, I'm trying to think of teams that only are known for defense that could just have a guy that maybe is just turning the ball over a ton. Do they have a guy that can just come in and do that? And right now, I don't know. There's no clear-cut team like the Broncos where you think, oh, they're wasting that talent. People can say, I mean, honestly, if a lot of people were looking at it, they might say it is the Steelers. But I don't think they have the offensive weapons in place after Bell and Brown. If Bell and Brown were still there, and with Roethlisberger getting hurt, like I said, that's not really a joke. If you can get Tom Brady to come in for a cheap contract knowing that, hey, you don't have to play the whole year. Let Ben take some plays. You guys can go back and forth. And 2 veteran quarterbacks coming into the playoffs healthy is better than none. But at that point, you'd have to swallow your pride. I don't know, because like if you're a young team and you have a contender possibly, except for quarterback, do you even want to risk it on a quarterback that could get hurt because of its age? I don't know.
Because I mean, he's a good quarterback, but I don't know that outside of that New England system where he's pretty much steering the machine, I can see a scenario where right now with Cleveland being open, if McDaniels becomes the head coach, to go there where he knows like they're going to be putting in his offensive system and he could have it would basically be him throwing to Landry and Beckham, and like I think that would be enough to change some of those things around there. Like that would be the only scenario where that would kind of make sense, because then Mayfield would also be in that situation where he could sit back and learn, and it would help him to mature a year or two where he wouldn't have to be in that situation.
And then it comes down to, do they have enough on defense to get it done? I don't know.
I mean, if you have enough weapons on offense, maybe it's the old arrogant coach in me, but maybe if you're just outscore them, just go with the June Jones run and shoot mantra and just outscore them.
Yeah, but then you have to trust that he can throw downfield consistently at his age.
Dink and dunk it.
Another one would be LA with the Rams. People are going off on their coaching staff and possibly their quarterback situation when they were in the Super Bowl a year ago. So they can't be that far off. I don't know if that would be a situation where, I mean, it would probably be appealing to Brady, where you can leave New England, go to California where he's from, the warm weather, just kind of like get ready for retirement. I would assume his family lives somewhere on the East Coast, but I could be wrong. He's been here for how long? But who knows? That could be another one. Maybe the Raiders. If John Gruden just says, hey, bring in your own stuff and do whatever you want to do. He's been the media man. He could probably fix something together like that. But who knows? I don't know if the Patriots are going to extend him like you said. They have a bunch of off-the-field stuff going on. Belichick knows that they don't have a lot of weapons. So you kind of just like let them know, like, we're going to bring you back. You're going to have to take a pay cut so we can go after some guys for you. Or what happens? Like, it was smart that they didn't do the franchise tag, because then he would have had to make more money. And they wouldn't have been able to surround him with guys. But if he takes a pay cut and says, like, hey, let's give it 2 more years. Give me 2 more years and then I'm done, or whenever. Would he be 45 at that point? I know he said he wanted to play till he's 45. So he has like 2 or 3 years left. I think it's 2. But I don't know. Because I think he was 42. But either or, it doesn't matter. Just get him in a situation where he can take a pay cut. Does he need the money? No. Do that and then get an insurance policy. Or if he gets hurt, they pay out.
I want to say it was Danny Kanell, but don't quote me. It was one of the bigger sports broadcasters was talking about how when you look at the way that the franchises were financially structured, the teams that had the highest priced quarterbacks were not the ones that were still participating in the playoffs, I believe, like the highest paid ones. So
yeah, I think we had that article on here before. It was like the top 10 highest quarterbacks were all non-playoff teams.
Yeah.
Because once you get to that point, you need to be able to spend to keep some of your skilled guys. Like, they have Derrick Henry. Look at how he's running now. Is he on a max contract yet? Like, at some point, he's going to earn his money, and he's going to be bouncing just like Le'Veon Bell did. So you got to look at the situation like that. Now is when you got to take advantage of it. If you want to try to build a team, like, look at what Marcus Mariota, how does he have to feel right now? Like, shit, that could be a team where Tom Brady could jump right in. Just jump ship. I mean, he has to be better than Tannehill, right?
I don't know. Tannehill got the war machine rolling.
Yeah, he's playing well. They put Mariota in. Every time they say, well, here comes Mariota, I just laugh. It's like, why are you even doing that to him? Like, fool's gold, like he's going to run the ball. Like, I know it's not like you're throwing in Tim Tebow or like a bigger running quarterback. You're throwing in Marcus Mariota. Give me a break. I know he's not running right into the middle of the line or something. He's not going to outrun people to the edge. But I don't know. That's my thoughts on that. For the Bills game, I thought they had it. Bills Mafia, I was pumped. They just didn't. I don't even know. It makes me mad. Because for one team that I think deserves a Super Bowl, I think it's the Bills. And they're like Minnesota. It's like, what are you doing? But at least Minnesota moved on.
Yes.
So
but when you look at both of those games, like I felt like that was an easy game to watch because it was one of those like the sweet lemons where regardless of which team won, like I wanted the Bills to win, but they did, and it's like, well, I think the Texans have a better built team to be able to compete in the next round. And the end game is don't let Baltimore advance. So I think that they stand a better chance to disrupt some of the rhythm and timing of Lamar Jackson, and that's going to be who I'm rooting for. Anti-Baltimore.
Well, you're exactly right. Just because Bill O'Brien had to face those offenses in college, like that was around the same time frame when he came up, and I mean, is he going to get enough to get it done? I'm actually happy for him because of the way he left Penn State and how they were they weren't even satisfied or happy with what he was doing there. And everyone on the outside had to have been able to see that, hey, Bill O'Brien is saving you guys so much from sanctions that people don't even think that you were punished. Like, that's how great of a coach he was at Penn State.
Yeah.
So now, whenever he's having some struggles in the NFL because he didn't have a quarterback, that's out of his control. So at some point, whenever your quarterback's getting hurt and stuff, now he finally has one in Watson, and he has some weapons on the outside. You're right. This could be a big upset in the making, but I don't know. We got to see going forward. Are they able to sustain it? Because is Bill O'Brien going to have a game plan? They were down, what was it? 16 or something against the Bills? 17? Yep. Something weird, I think. But they said that he'd never made a comeback from that point. He was like 0 and 20 something, 22. And I thought, good God, how many times is he behind that much? 22 times? He was like 0 and 22. I was like, holy cow. How many times do you come out and have a bad game plan? But got it done in the playoffs, so can't knock that. You have anything else on that game?
No. That was another one that went down to overtime as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, because both teams got the ball, and then the next score won. And they had the deep throw on the check down. Like Watson rolled out, he took the hit, and was able to stay up. The Bills actually could have had him dead to rights. They should have threw him down. They didn't make the fundamental play. He rolled out, and he hit the receiver down the sideline and broke it all the way down to like the 1, and they immediately kicked the field goal. Or however far down he made it. Like, they didn't even mess around. And that's another end of game situation I was going to talk about. I got derailed on the Patriots one. But whenever you're down, a lot of people, they wouldn't kick the field goal there. And I was nervous about them doing it early. But I understand why they did it. Like, let's get out of here. They were in the situation. They trusted their kicker. I think they said that he hadn't missed inside that range like ever or something was a stat that they showed. And so I thought, you know what? If that's what you're going to do, go for it. If he's confident, go.
In that situation, like with it being a first down, it's good to kick because if it's not like a hold that you're comfortable with, you can always pull a Charlie Brown and just pull it out and throw it away. And then you're still like getting a second. You still have a chance to fix it in the event of a bad stat.
That's true. Well, that's the one thing that brought me back to the New England one is I had in my notes here. I just looked. Why not quarterback sneak with Tom Brady from the 1-yard line? You have the guy that's supposedly the best at quarterback sneaking all time. And I know you don't want to get him hit, but like, just score the points. Score the touchdown and you win the game. What?
Ask Andy Reid how that works. He had to spend like 6 weeks listening to people say why you shouldn't run your all-pro quarterback on a quarterback sneak.
Hey, you have Tom Brady. He quarterback sneak forever. Do that, just like the other Pete Carroll. Just run Marshawn Lynch. What are you doing? Why are you throwing down there? People can second guess it, but sometimes when you try to get cute, then what do you have? You have a 3-yard loss on the first run, and then a couple other runs get stopped, and then you get a field goal. You lose the game by 1, which turned into 7. But that's my final thoughts. Anything else you had on those games?
No. I did think that they were just good. They were good games overall. Like there were no games that were like this is a really crappy game, and Like, they were enjoyable to watch, which was nice.
Yeah, I was trying to think, were there any commercials and things that were weird? I don't, well, actually having them on different networks makes it easy to see like what different TV shows like they do in terms of commercials. And one of them kind of annoyed me because they were like, hey, real quick from a sponsor here, like right in the middle of like one of the plays at the end of the game. And I thought, why are they jamming this commercial right here? They showed like a 1 30-second spot. And then, that guy with the red flag ran out on the field and stopped the entire play. I forget which game it was. I should have wrote it down. But that was the only negative that I had in terms of the broadcasts and the games. Let's go look at the next week. Vikings 49ers. Who do you have?
Oh, that Niners team, I think, is going to be tough to beat. I'm pulling for the Vikes, but I think it's going to be the Niners.
Actually, hold on a second, because Jeff sent me his once we started. He has the Vikings in a surprise pick. I think the 49ers are going to win, but if there's any team that would choke, I feel like this is a year where Vikings have to. They got the win against the Saints. They weren't supposed to get that one. Now they need to ride it out. I think if they win against the 49ers, they have a great chance at making the Super Bowl. But they got to get it done on the road. Next one.
Game going. If they don't run the ball, they're going to get killed.
Oh, I know.
That was the thing that hurt them during that game that had my dad fired up. Was that the Vikings were doing nothing on the ground. I said, well, that's because their passing game was horrid. They weren't pushing the ball down the field, so the Saints were able to load the box up. If they can't get a ground game going, it hurts because Cousins isn't mobile enough to make plays with his legs. So they get killed. They stand back there and get shelled.
And that's something the 49ers are good at. So they have to stretch the field, get Diggs going. But I don't know if they're going to be able to get it done because Cousins doesn't have that big time arm where he can turn broken plays into big shots downfield to open that run game up. The game we talked about a little bit, Titans and Ravens. Who do you have in that one? That's the other Saturday night game.
Man, it's another one. They knocked off the Pats. I want to say the Titans, but I can't. I think the Ravens are built for a run right now.
Jeff has the Ravens, and I have the Ravens as well. I think the Ravens, at this point in time, they're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl. Now, if they win it, that depends on what the matchup is, but I don't think anyone in the AFC is stopping them. Next game, first game on Sunday, Texans and the Chiefs.
I want to say Andy Reid's going to pull it off, but I don't know. I think it's going to be the Texans.
Jeff has the Chiefs, but you're right. I'm feeling the same way. I think this is an upset special. Chiefs come in, they get the late bye, and you think, oh, they're going to be ready to go. And then I just remember they have Andy Reid. So they're not going to be ready to go. And the Texans coming off that big come-from-behind win, I think they bring that momentum on the road, and they get it done. Last game, Seahawks and Packers.
Aaron Rodgers, discount double check.
Jeff has the Seahawks, and I have to go Seahawks just because I hate the Packers. So there's no reason. That's my most hated game of the weekend. I think I hate the Packers most. Maybe it's because the Steelers lost that Super Bowl to them when Ben could have 3 Super Bowls. I don't know. I just don't like Aaron Rodgers. His family doesn't even like him. His own brother. So wasn't he on The Bachelor or something? I don't watch reality TV, but I think I remember that. ESPN posted an article about how Aaron Rodgers' own brother doesn't like him. That's all you need to know, Matt. Why I'm picking the Seahawks and Pete Carroll, my man. All right, let's get into the coaching changes. Big one. Cowboys hire Mike McCarthy. The Panthers interview him. We talked about it on the show. And I thought, well, that's not going to be a really big upgrade. Because we compared Mike Tomlin to Mike McCarthy, and they were pretty much identical in terms of division championships, playoff appearances, early losses, and Super Bowl appearances. So when I went back and looked at McCarthy compared to Jason Garrett, it's a big upgrade. I was going to come in and I was planning, I'm like, oh, good. I can talk trash on Mike McCarthy again. I really can't. there's a reason they went out and got him immediately, because we had talked about the rumors with Urban Meyer and Lincoln Riley, Cowboys potentially looking at some of the college quarterbacks or college coaches that work with quarterbacks similar to Dak Prescott. And I thought they're going to go in that direction. But then it came out pretty clear that they wanted a coach with experience to help build this team into a consistent contender. And why not go for a guy that made the playoffs like 9 years or whatever it was with the Packers? I know he had Aaron Rodgers, but at some point, did he develop Aaron Rodgers? Because he was the offensive coordinator with the 49ers, McCarthy was. Whenever he left there, the 49ers fell off the face of the earth. And he took over, developed Aaron Rodgers, handled the Brett Favre situation fairly well, and won a Super Bowl. Then they were kind of meandering, but again, you have the Aaron Rodgers stuff where you have a ton of money into a quarterback, can't build weapons around him, but you need this quarterback because he's doing all these ads for State Farm or wherever he's doing ads for. So they got to get it done. Give him a shot. I'm actually excited to see what he does because I hate the Eagles the most. So anyone in that division can win it besides the Eagles, I'll be happy. I don't care. I don't have a hatred for the Cowboys. I know Neil O'Donnell's still throwing balls to him, but that's not this Cowboy team. Let's be honest. What are your thoughts on that hire?
I liked it. I like the fact that he was staying relevant. And I think when you look at coaches like how you've been a big advocate for Urban Meyer and how he takes his time away from coaching, and then it seems like he comes back to the next team and ends up playing well. So I mean, I think having that time away, you see Gruden is slowly building Oakland up after taking his break from coaching. It doesn't seem like it's hurting people. Parcells went into the booth for a while, came back and rebuilt New England and Dallas. So, I mean, I do think that there's something to these coaches that even though they're not coaching per se, as long as they're staying relevant and they're keeping up, I think they end up with more access to players and coaches and to be able to talk ball, that it gives them more experiences that when they get that next gig, they're a little bit better prepared. And I think a fresh start for McCarthy is what he needed because he was kind of just stuck in that rut with Rodgers, and people were saying, well, it was similar to the argument of Belichick and Brady. It was, well, McCarthy had Rodgers, and he was just relying on Rodgers to check him out of plays. So with a fresh start in Dallas, if he can win there, then it kind of takes some of that pressure off of him.
Yeah, I think it's good because a lot of people were telling them or McCarthy that he was wasting Aaron Rodgers. And I didn't think that was the point at all. I think Aaron Rodgers was forcing a lot of plays and not putting them in good situations. And so whenever you have that, yeah, you can build up stats. Everyone saw Peyton Manning build up all those stats, but when it came time in the playoffs to get it done, he wasn't getting it done. So at some point, you can coach him to get him in the right position. But it's not like since they fired McCarthy, the Packers have been awesome. I mean, if they lose to the Seahawks again this weekend, typical Packers year. You win a weak conference or weak division, and then you come into playoffs and lose. Will it happen? I don't know. We will see. But this is a good situation where if McCarthy can get Dallas rolling, it could turn his legacy around. Because a lot of people were like, yeah, he got lucky because he had a young Aaron Rodgers to win him a Super Bowl. If he wins another one and Aaron Rodgers doesn't get another one, that's whenever you flip it. I think that's why at this point people are talking about Bill Belichick and should he let Tom Brady go. I think he probably wants him gone. Because he had a good quarterback in Garoppolo. Could you imagine if they would have pushed Tom Brady out then? Would things have been different? Would they have gotten another Super Bowl with Garoppolo? I don't know. He has the 49ers right now, the best record in the NFC. They got the 1 seed. I know they tied with a couple other teams, but you're in a situation where you're looking at what coaches are remembered for. Are they remembered for working with one quarterback? He has a fresh start, took a year off, 2 years off, whatever it was, and we'll see how that turns around. The one that I thought was shocking in that same division, the Giants. Now, I don't know if we actually mentioned this on the show, But before what bowl was Michigan and Alabama? The Citrus Bowl? Before that bowl was announced, or right before it started, the day of, I guess it wasn't announced, before they played the game, there were some rumors that it was possibly Nick Saban's last game at Alabama. And you've been hearing this for about 2 years. I think, what's that guy, Feinbaum? I don't know his first name, because I think Harbaugh called him Pete, but I don't think that's his real name.
It's Paul.
So, yeah, Paul, Pete, almost similar. But Feinbaum, he was saying last year that he thought Saban was at the point where he's not going to be the head coach anymore. He's already getting up close to 70 years old. So the rumors were, and actually Bruce Arians, I believe, started the fire last year when he said, keep an eye on the New England or the New York job, the Giants job. He said that's the one that Nick Saban would want in the NFL, which I thought was odd as I was doing research for this show. I thought, oh, let's see if those Nick Saban rumors are still up. And the rumors were that he would retire as a head coach from Alabama and then try to find a player development role, possibly as a GM. And the connections were originally with the Giants or the Redskins. And we know the Redskins hired Ron Rivera, and I thought that'd be a good fit. But then whenever I saw that the Giants went with coach, the New England, he's like the special teams coach or whatever. That's the only thing he's known for. Special teams, and he coached receivers for 1 year is what I saw. But he has ties to Belichick, and he has ties to who else? Saban. So I don't know if it's going to be this year, but if he does retire from Alabama, and I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him in on that role, where he's able to just help evaluate college players as they're coming up and trying to rebuild from basically scratch. What pieces do the Giants have that you can build around? That team, I feel like, is going to be bad for a while. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. The one job that I thought is going to be the interesting hire is Carolina, with hiring Matt Rule away from Baylor. You know, you were talking earlier about Bill O'Brien and the job that he did at Penn State. I think it was interesting to see what Rule did, being hired away from Temple to go to Baylor after Art Briles' sexual abuse scandals with the players and the issues that they had at that university, that he was able to go in under the sanctions and have them come in the playoff contention in year 3. That is he going to be able to work that kind of magic in the NFL? And I hope that he does, because the stuff that I've seen him talk about and the coaching stuff that he's put out has been very positive. And he's a Pennsylvania guy, so I'd like to see him do well, but I'm skeptical of making that jump that fast into the NFL.
Well, you're right in that Pennsylvania thing. He's a Penn State guy. And if we're being honest, he was the one that was mentioned as the number one candidate if James Franklin were to leave Penn State. He was rumored at Florida State, and he's still rumored at USC. So this hire is not just gigantic for the NFL and Baylor and the Big 12. It also hits Penn State hard, because they're offering him close to what I think it's $60 million guaranteed with possible $70 million, basically $10 million a year or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
and the Panthers are on the hook for his, I think it's $6 million buyout yet to boot from Baylor.
Yeah, there's no way he's going back to Penn State for at least, unless he bombs out of the NFL at all. So if that USC job, like I said, maybe USC was told by Urban Meyer, maybe they weren't, but he wanted to see if he could get the Cowboys job or an NFL job. They didn't go that direction. Now, is that going to open up a college job for him next year? Is he going to go to USC? If not, they're 100% firing Clay Helton next year. I mean, I thought they were going to fire him right now. They could still fire him right now. If they think they can get Urban Meyer, do you not fire him right now? He has the last recruiting class in the Pac-12. They just got boat raced by Iowa. I don't care. The second signing day is not over yet. I know a lot of the guys are signed. Doesn't make sense to go move, but
you got to take that bowl game out, because he thought he was going to get fired after the bowl game, and then he didn't. So now he's recruiting right now to keep his class intact.
They already lost the guy. They already lost two guys. The one guy, the cornerback, he already flipped to Michigan, and they said that he signed on early signing day. It was just they kept it under wraps because he wanted to announce at the Under Armour game or whatever game he played in. So that's one of their big time recruits, and I think the other one flipped to Ohio State, the quarterback, because of that whole situation. And I agree. I hate bowl games. I don't think they matter at all. So I see that point, but whenever you're like a dead man walking and you're getting killed by Iowa in basically your backyard, were they Arizona, California? I don't remember where that bowl game was played. You get destroyed. You have the worst recruiting class in possible USC history. Let's be honest. That could be the worst one in history. And what are you doing? You're just like out there. Yeah, okay. We're not going to be able to sign anybody because we already missed that first signing day. Oh, shucks. Meanwhile, the AD's like, Urban, you tested out the NFL waters. Why don't you come down? Why don't you come down? And if he doesn't come down, do they just aggressively pursue James Franklin? And if you're Penn State, you have to do everything possible to make him the highest paid coach if he needs it. Because I don't know where else you're going to go. It's all nice whenever you have Matt Rule as your backup, played at Penn State, and you're like, okay, we have a guy with connections to us that would possibly take this job because a jump from Baylor to Penn State is definitely an upgrade. But now he's gone. Where do you go from there? If you're Penn State admins, I feel like you have to be nervous after that first one because the USC job is still open. Helton's not keeping that job after next year. They would have to win the national championship. It would have to be a Coach O turnaround, and I don't see that happening.
Well, I think what you're going to see, you were saying about Saban starting to get up there in age. I think you may start to see some of the negative recruiting that Bowden and Joe Paterno saw at the end of their careers, where as he starts to get up there in age, that it becomes, well, how much longer is he going to stay? What else does he have to prove? He's already won national championships. He's won, all these different awards. He's done everything that he could do. He could walk away at any moment, and you're going to start to see some of that negative recruiting that's going to affect his recruiting classes.
Yeah, that's the one thing where, like I said, these rumors started a year or two ago with Feinbaum and then Arians, where they were talking about him wanting to just take an NFL gig. I feel like I said, that's kind of been his specialty, recruiting guys, developing them, going right into that, and then just taking it to the next step. Why not? I mean, we rib on him about his NFL stuff. I saw someone say that he was about 500, but I'm pretty sure he's below 500 in the NFL. I don't think he ever had a winning season. Was he 7-9? And then whatever the first season. So you're looking at that, and maybe he gives it another go, and he can say, like, look, I could have been successful in the NFL. They didn't let me pick my own guys. Now that I picked my own guys, we won a Super Bowl. Fitting way to end his career. Let's get into high tempo, though. The big one that I had, and I don't know if you had anything else other than this, but Tua, since we're talking about Nick Saban, they came out, Matt, they announced that they were having a press conference for Nick Saban. When was that one? Yesterday or today? And I thought, oh my gosh, it's happening. They're going to announce that guy for the Patriots, and then Nick Saban's going to announce that he's retiring right now. And it's going to line up, and I'm going to talk about it on the show, how he's rumored to take that gig with the Giants. But they just announced that Tua was going to the NFL. And at this point, I don't see any reason why not. I would have assumed that Alabama has an insurance policy on him, just like every other big-time program has out there. I think one of their linebackers even said that he was going to stay in college, and then his dad said, oh, no, we didn't make that decision together. We have to at least see what kind of insurance policy we have or something strange like that. And then I thought, well, that good on the dad. If you're getting a first-round grade, you better have at least an insurance policy paid for that if you get injured, you're at least going to get your guaranteed first-round money. So Tua's going to drop. Would you draft him? No. If the Steelers picked him with a fourth-round pick, I'd be upset. What a waste of a fourth-round pick. Because that's a development. Unlike, I know the Steelers need a quarterback, but who knows how long it's going to take. They said that's a Bo Jackson injury. Bo Jackson never recovered.
Yeah.
So he's going to drop back into, who knows? This is unknown territory. The only other person that they said had an injury like this is Bo Jackson. That's not a good comparison. I know it was like 20 years ago, but if they said like, okay, Bo Jackson and 40 other people have had this injury, so we know how to do it, like the surgeries and stuff, they don't know.
But they did say that they caught it early, and with the advances in medical,
they caught him laying on the field.
Yes, they scooped him up and they immediately did it, as opposed to like waiting around for it to figure out. But I think when you look at this, like with this group of quarterbacks that's coming out, I mean, if you're in need of a quarterback, you have Burrow, you have Jalen Hurts, like you have some other options that I think you could use Herbert from Oregon that are going to be more polished NFL ready quarterbacks. That I think that to work on your rehab, to me, I think it would make more sense to stick around for another year to see how that rehab goes, because it's not going to, having that other year isn't going to, it's only going to help your draft status at this point.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. For some of those guys, if you're looking at it, for him, he has to go now. If he comes back, the only thing that could happen is negative. Like, he's not going to play his way back up. They're going to draft on potential right now. If he comes back and he plays at 50% next year at Alabama, and they don't think that he has the same pop, because let's be honest, it's going to take 2 years for that to heal most likely. If you have basketball players that have injuries that take, like Paul George, where it takes them an entire year just for a broken leg, imagine a broken hip. That's going to take like 2 years for that to fully heal and get mobility back. I mean, it could be like a Ryan Shazier thing. We don't know. Is he walking on it? Like, how long does that even take to even relearn how to walk, let alone relearn how to run? So I mean, you have to go pro, and you have to hope that someone drops you. Look at how far Mo Hurst dropped when he had his heart condition from Michigan. He was from a first round, second round type guy all the way to like, what, the fourth round or sixth round? I can't remember where the Raiders drafted him. He's been a beast for the Raiders, but they didn't know. And that was a guy that they knew, okay, this isn't going to affect his performance at all. With Tua, you have to think that he's dropping all that way because they don't know what the performance is going to be like.
Yep.
So, and I mean, I'm left-handed, so I hate to say this, but he's left-handed too. It's harder for lefties to get the look just because ball spins differently. They have different throwing angles. I mean, look at all the stuff people talked about Tim Tebow. He's going to have to deal with that too. I don't know. I just feel bad for the guy. Nothing else around it that I could say like, hey, but I wish him the best. If the Steelers nab him with like the 7th round pick, I wouldn't mind that, to be honest. But if you're reaching into like the 3rd or 4th round pick, I think a lot of fans are going to be disappointed just because you don't know. And that's around where you can get some projects that maybe contribute early. Got anything else for High Tempo?
Just some Bulldog news. We had our state rankings released, and we had one of our players make the all-state teams from the Writers Association. Our linebacker Seth Musselman made first team, and that's a pretty big deal for us to be recognized across the state as one of the best at what he was doing. And I think I was really proud of him. And also we had several players that were local Blair County first and second team members. There were a couple of them, but it was just nice that as the final season stuff wraps up, but we had a lot of guys that were recognized, and we are now back to the weight room for the 2020 season. So we're back in the grind, and actually was very pleased with the start of our lifting season, being that we're a small program and we have a lot of guys that are in wrestling and playing basketball. We still had pretty nice size turnout for day one.
Yeah, very cool. Always good to see small town guys get big time recognition across the state. So good luck to them in the future, and good luck to you next year, Coach.
Thank you.
After the Super Bowl, my next big topic, we have the XFL. They released their rules, and so I'm going to go through these because I'm trying to get people to realize that the XFL, they're going to give it a go, and they're going to try to see And last time the XFL came out and had a bunch of different changes, the NFL stole them. They stole a lot of the TV angles. It got NBC into like the Sunday night game. That wasn't big until after the XFL. They did the Sky Cam. They did a bunch of different things out there for the XFL that worked, that the NFL stole, and then a lot of the media writers made fun of the XFL anyway. So here's some of the other ones. The first one that stood out to me is they're going to try a kickoff. And from what I've read, it looks like the kicking team, you're not going to be in a line like at the 35-yard line. The kicking team are going to be down almost like in a punt formation where you have blockers on one side and the receiving team lined up, where the kicker's like back 20 yards, and instead of punting, he's kicking it. And I thought, okay, I see that they're going to minimize the collision because the guys aren't running 30 yards and hitting each other. They're all lined up at each other. I don't know how an onside would work from that. But at that point, just punt it. I said that all along. Just make it a 4th and 20 from like the 50 and just punt it. Figure out whatever you need to do. It'll be interesting to see. Their idea is that if it's a touchback, if your kicker's able to kick it that far, because he's kicking from the 35, they're thinking that they're going to get more returns this way. So they line up at the 30 and 35 on the other side of the field. Your blockers and your receiving team. And they're kind of in a scrum. I don't know what the lineup's going to look like. And then they have the one deep man who's back at the goal line. He catches the ball, and if the other team's broken through, he can like fair catch it or take the touch back. And if not, he runs it up, and they think they're going to try to have this feature more returns. We'll see how that one works. Now, they said that on punts, players can't leave on the kicking team. You know how they have the gunners, and I think the snapper, depending on the league of play, he can run down the field. They don't want to do that because they want to get teams to actually return punts. So I think that's a good move. And I think that also takes away some of the more dangerous hits when the guy doesn't fair catch it and doesn't realize the guy's coming out of the corner of his eye. And a lot of their stuff they're trying to do is mark the ball at the 35 to get it away from the end zone. So based on the 2 kick changes, Matt, what are your thoughts on those?
I'm open to seeing those changes. I mean, you're not going to make drastic moves up into the NFL unless you're trying them somewhere. And I don't really have. It'll be an adjustment because of the way that most teams have traditionally looked at your special teams. But if you have the different rules, teams will adjust, and you'll make those changes accordingly.
Okay, the next couple are scoring ones that we've talked about before, so I'm just going to revisit them so that you know. They're going to give you a chance for a 1-point play. There's no kicking after touchdown, so you get a 1-point play from a 2-yard line. You can line up at the 3-yard line for 2 points, or 3 points from the 10-yard line, which they think is going to help increase scoring. And like if your team's down, you can just go for 3 or go for 1 to keep games more competitive. Then like the overtime is going to be similar to college, where you're just taking turns, but you get 5 possessions from the 5-yard line. You either score and you get a point, or you don't. So it's kind of like a penalty kick meets college football overtime. So I would like to see that and how it works out. They have 2 forward passes on 1 play. So this only affects trick plays really, because it can't go past the line of scrimmage. But you know how sometimes they'll throw like a screen and then that guy will throw the ball downfield. And lately in college and the NFL, they always review it to see if he threw it forward or if it's going backwards. They're just ignoring that. As long as he's behind the line of scrimmage, you can still throw the ball downfield to try to get more trick plays. It's only 1 foot in bounds for the XFL, similar to college, because they said that a lot of injuries have occurred with players trying to like twist their body to get 2 feet down. So it's more natural just to have 1 foot down. Then they have like a bunch of official changes. They're going to have 9 officials. With one of them, his only job is to spot the ball so that the guy doesn't spot the ball and then run back and wait and to blow the whistle. They're thinking that that could speed up the game per some feedback from the AAF. So I guess the AAF did that. I don't know. There's a video official that can call down and review any play. I said every league should be doing that right now. But until I see how it works, I'm not going to get excited about it because I want them to do it immediately and just give the ruling. Don't buzz down and tell the other guy to run off the field and look into a little window and then make the call. Just have a guy in the booth that has enough balls to call the penalties from the booth. And just have him, like he can even be mic'd up by the TV networks and explain it to the fans at home why he did that. What are the other ones? Oh, offensive linemen can go downfield 2 yards when a pass is thrown so that they can get more RPO style offensive stuff going. But I think that's pretty much it, except for they had one other tweak that we hadn't talked about. And I think we hit most of those before, but we might not have, so I'll give you a chance to hit them on after. But the last one, they're aiming for games to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long. NFL games are 3 hours and 6 minutes. So they're doing a running clock until 2 minutes left in the quarter. So even if it's an incomplete pass, they're just going to keep the clock running. There's no long halftime. It's only 10 minutes, 2 timeouts, and there's no coin toss. Home team gets to decide if they want the ball or to receive. If it goes to overtime, the visiting team has the advantage, which I think is a good move. For playoffs, maybe not so much, but if you're able to get to overtime, give the visiting team a shot to choose if they want offense or defense first. Because remember, it's not like the NFL where you can score off just receiving the ball. It's going to be like college, so who cares what the coin toss is? Let the visiting team pick offense or defense, and then the home team can pick what end zone they want. If they have fans, we'll see. But any insight you want to give on any of those rules?
Well, as far as the lineman downfield, that's similar to what they're already allowing. They're allowing 3 yards cushion to begin with, so I think it may even just be that they're going to be a little bit more lax with that if they're going to encourage RPOs in the XFL.
Yeah, we'll see. I know it depends. I don't know is it even a written rule in the NFL? I know in college they say they usually give you 3 yards, but I've seen it called sometimes where they don't. It just depends. So
it's one of those that it depends on the crew. And this past season, we were a team that with our RPOs, we did not get penalized for linemen downfield, but we've had the previous year, the year before that, there was a game where we had a crew that was really watching it tight and threw multiple flags for it. So it just depends on the crew and how quick your quarterback can get the ball out of his hand.
yeah, that's true. But I want to see a lot more of the reads because we had talked about with Mark Ingram whenever he went down because they were holding the ball. The longer you hold the ball before you pull it, the worse chance you have of your guys going downfield. So, I mean, I would be fine with them just having some sort of just blocking thing where you teach the guys they can block their guy. If you pancake them 5 yards downfield, let them have the pancake. Who cares at all? It's whenever they do like a screen and the one of the tackles is downfield turned around and he gets the ball, hit him in the chest. I think that's where you have the issue. So, I don't know. Anything else you have?
Nope.
All right, we got one last topic, college football. The college bowl games wrapped up. To be honest, I thought they were a dud this year. Every year I just hate the bowl season more and more. And I think it's because of this invitational tournament that they have. It's not really a national championship because they're just picking a couple teams that they want in there. But it's not enough to make me think, okay, every team had a fair shot. So why am I watching these games? So I looked and I tried to look at the ratings, but I forgot that if you remember in the years past, they were jamming the playoff games on New Year's Eve. So the ratings for those games were so astronomically bad that it looks like the past 2 years playoffs and bowl ratings have shot through the roof. But all that's happened is they just moved them to Saturday. So I don't know. I tried to get some numbers here. And of course, the Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl are down because no one cares about them. If they're not playoff bowls, no one cares. Of course, the Citrus Bowl with Alabama and Michigan was a gigantic hit. 14 million people watched that game, which we predicted. I knew that was the most appealing bowl outside of the playoff games and whatever. I think they said that that was the largest audience for that game in 12 years. The last time, Matt, do you remember the Citrus Bowl that would have had more viewers? 2008. It's
Yeah,
whenever.
no, I don't pay close to the Citrus Bowl.
Well, you should though. This is your favorite team, the Florida Gators, and Urban Meyer. They lost to Michigan that year. Urban Meyer's lone loss to Michigan. 2008. That was the year Michigan lost to App State, and then they beat Tim Tebow in Florida in the Citrus Bowl, and people forgot about that upset because they didn't know how to feel. Florida can't lose to a team that loses to App State, right? Wrong. The Kentucky Penn State game, there from last year, viewership jumped 82% for the Michigan game. Michigan-Alabama was 82% higher than Penn State and Kentucky in that game last year. Really, I'm shocked. People weren't turning in to watch Kentucky football. Holy cow, that's not even a knock on Penn State. But Penn State can't help it who they play. People aren't watching their team. Let's see what else. They have the Rose Bowl was at 16.3 million, which is down from last year. Of course, all the other bowl games are down because people don't care. Why would you watch Wisconsin and Oregon play whenever you can just watch Ohio State, the Big Ten champ, in the playoffs? The Rose Bowl was for nothing. There was absolutely nothing at stake in that game. People still hold on to the Rose Bowl as like the best bowl, and I don't understand it. It must be an old person mentality. Like, hey, we went to the Rose Bowl. Someone said that they had I saw someone post that they had a t-shirt on Twitter that had Michigan's like 1989 season, and it was like how successful they were, and they had the Rose Bowl win on one side and the college basketball national championship on the other side. And I just thought, like, why? Why would they not give the basketball national championship top billing? Who cares about the Rose Bowl? You won nothing at that point. Who cares if you won the Big Ten? That's my feelings. But until they expand it, I don't know what's going to be better. They said that they didn't have no figures on the Florida State-Arizona State game, unfortunately, Matt, so I don't know how that one did. And there were a bunch of them that didn't. But they thought that, what did it say? ESPN PR did their own little thing. It didn't really say. Some of them had the smallest audience in 3 years. But, like, again, I don't know the Bulls to compare it because they keep rotating for the playoffs. So all I've seen is the big Bulls are down, except for the Citrus Bowl, but that was just a better matchup. So I don't know how to view it. What are your thoughts on the bowl games? Did any stand out to you?
The bowl games as a whole, I don't think are bad, but I think that when they have as many bowls as there are now, that I think that in itself is going to hurt some of the viewership numbers, because I don't think, unless you're a true football junkie, you're not tuning in to watch every single bowl. So I think that you're going to hit your certain matchups. And like for us, we were looking at Air Force Washington State. I thought that Rose Bowl matchup between Oregon's spread and Wisconsin's power run game was going to be an interesting matchup to see how they would square up. So individually, there were certain matchups, but I think as a whole, I know you really want to see the playoff expanded, but to me, even if you expand it, you're going to expand it, and you're going to end up letting in multiple SEC teams, and they really didn't perform that well overall in their bowls. So it is what it is.
But like I said, I don't care about the at-large teams as long as you give each conference one champion in. Over time, if your conference keeps winning and winning and winning, look at what happened at UConn. I saw a thing in UConn basketball with their men's team and like the Big East. Even though all those teams left the Big East, UConn were still able to win national championships in the old ravaged Big East by themselves. So much so that ESPN did an article today. I just read it about the NCAA tournament and how all these power conferences together, except for UConn, it said right in the heading, all these teams have a chance except for UConn because they don't have any data on them because they don't know how they won the national championship. It's like, who cares? They were from a different conference, a smaller one. They won the championship. You had to give them a chance to win it. Of course, they don't fit your criteria of being Duke or UNC or some other gigantic school. But they've done it enough that you can see if UCF was actually giving a legitimate chance to win the national championship, what if they won? Like, what would they just overtake Miami at all? Would people even care about Miami anymore? That team that won national championships 30 years ago? If another team in Florida popped up and started stealing recruits and actually winning the national championship, I think you would see a big shift. That's why I want it. I want smaller schools to be like, hey, I want a chance at winning something big. Like Memphis this year. Their coach left to go to Florida State, and then they had to play Penn State. Of course they were going to lose that game. Penn State was running wild on them, but like, why couldn't that game have been a playoff game? Alabama-Michigan game was such a big hit. Why couldn't that have been a playoff game? That would have been a great one. Michigan had a lead at halftime. Alabama turns around in the second half and comes back and wins. They move on in the playoffs. I don't think anyone would be talking negatively about either of those games if they were playoff games.
But I think when you look at some of these teams, like with the early signing period, I think it's still going to affect these bowl games, because even if you expand it to this playoff, and to use that Penn State-Memphis game as an example, Norvell goes to Florida State. Even if they're a playoff team, it's tough to say, I want to coach my team through the playoffs knowing that I have early signing day and I have to pull a lot more recruits and I have a lot of work to do because the program I'm taking over is in rough shape. Do you risk getting fired in 2 to 3 years of lackluster performance because you whiffed on your first recruiting class? I mean, to me, I think the NCAA has created a monster with this early signing period now, because that's going to hurt your playoff expansion. Because if you're going to say, let some of these small school coaches go to big schools, they're poaching a lot of these mid-level non-Power 5 coaches to fill these Power 5 schools when they go to take NFL jobs, or they take bigger Power 5 jobs. So even if you expand it to 10, 12, 14 teams, when that Memphis, when that Florida Atlantic, when they move on, if they're a playoff team, I don't know that they have the time to stick around and coach, because they're going to have to hit the recruiting trail for their new school, and it's just physically not plausible to do.
I'll go the other direction with it, and I think I can have a pretty good example here that you might agree with. Look at what Frank Beamer did with Virginia Tech. That was a small school back in the day. They were in the Big East, a basketball conference that got destroyed because they were only looked at as Miami and everyone else. He stayed at Virginia Tech because he got to the national championship game with, was that Mike Vick? Where they lost to Florida State?
Yes.
If he does not play in that national championship game, he was highly sought after. You don't think that he would have moved? He gets to the national championship game. They eventually get invited to the ACC. Now everyone views him as like a historical football power in the ACC. They weren't. That was a Big East small school that has never won a national championship in anything, I believe. That was it. That's basically what you're looking at for some of these other schools. What's the difference? Right now, what you're looking at is if you look at the recruiting rankings and you look at the teams that have been in the playoffs multiple years, Alabama, Clemson, even Ohio State, they're recruiting the top classes. The only school that has been in there multiple times that hasn't taken advantage of it is Oklahoma. And they're the ones that are getting bounced every year. I don't think they've ever made a national championship game. What you're seeing is recruits looking at the schools that are making it. And right now, they're just only focusing on them schools. Those schools are picking the top recruits. I think if you expand the playoffs, because right now, at some point, the divide's going to become so big that you're going to have your de facto playoff team, the Alabama, the Ohio State, maybe Georgia, whatever school's recruiting hot at that time. If USC were to make it a bunch of years, they would probably be top 5 in recruiting every year, just because that's the Pac-12 playoff team. If you're on the West Coast and you want to make the playoffs, you think Utah's making it? Nope. Washington, yeah, they got laughed out of it once. What other school is going to be in there and able to compete? Recruits are going to see that. They're only going to go to that school. If you expand it, then players and maybe even coaches decide, hey, you know what? I got a good shot at making the playoffs here. Why would I jump to so-and-so school if I had a chance there? Like, think of like Matt Campbell at Iowa State. He's had a chance to jump at a couple things. He thinks he has a chance to win in the Big 12 right now. I mean, they don't have divisions. It's probably going to be tough for them. But if he were to get past Oklahoma, is there really any other consistent team in the Big 12 that could say no? I mean, Baylor just lost their coach. There's a prime conference that's able to just have one team. If they're able to make that jump, if Iowa State were to get into the thing, maybe Matt Campbell sees that and they think, okay, I'm going to stay here. And that's all a small school says. Maybe Scott Frost never goes back to Nebraska. Why would he have left Nebraska if he had a chance for UCF to make the playoffs 2 or 3 times in a row? I don't think he would have.
Well, I think he did. I think he had that opportunity to.
Yeah, but he had to have known we're never getting in the playoffs. If they didn't let him in, Matt, they went undefeated. He beat Auburn. They got named national championships or national champion. They got named by an NCAA selector as national champion, and they were not even in the playoff discussion the next year. They had him ranked like 18th or something. Of course he's going to leave. Why would he stay?
Because of the power of those Power 5 schools. You know, use Matt Campbell as an example. He's one that maybe he does stay. Maybe he pulls a Beamer and doesn't leave.
They are one of the power schools, though. They're already in a Power conference.
Well,
it's a little bit different, but
when I look at him as a lower level, look at you're still looking at the Big 12, but with Rich Rod, say he stays at West Virginia as a smaller school that typically isn't on that bigger stage.
Well, hell, you have one with Holgorsen. Holgorsen left West Virginia to go to Houston. Houston's in that lower division right now. They were almost like a Virginia Tech at this point. They were hot. They upset. Who did they upset that year? Was it Oklahoma? Did they win the conference? They lost, or did they lose to UCF that year? Like, they had 1 or 2 hot years, and then Holgorsen ended up going there. Now, who knows what's going to happen to them, but that's the type of team that I'm saying, like, if they can get into the playoffs, maybe it's going to help them with recruiting. And why not? What other Texas school is doing well right now? None. Why not let it be Houston? They might be able to pull some local fans from Texas and say, hey, we're fans now. Let's see what happens. But as it stands right now, unless you're from one of the early teams in the 14 playoffs, and I think the other bigger schools are starting to notice that. Like, hey, when we're going up to recruits, you gotta believe that the coaches are just going to negatively recruit and say, why would you go to Florida State right now? They were in one playoff, and didn't they get killed by Oregon? Like, come on. That's all they have to say. And then they're going to say, just come to Clemson instead. We won 2 national championships in the playoffs. We're always in the playoffs. The recruiting is, at some point, is going to pay off like that. And I think that's why you're seeing Clemson.
We did just celebrate our 6-year anniversary of winning a recent national championship.
But it wasn't playoffs.
In the modern era.
It wasn't playoffs. People aren't going to, that's not a modern era. The modern era is the playoffs. And people are just going to negatively recruit. They're going to say, look, Florida State hasn't done it in the playoffs. Clemson has. Come to Clemson.
I think the BS was more legit than this random playoff.
But like I said, that's not what these young kids are saying. They only see the playoffs. Their entire high school career, there's been a college playoff. So to them, that's the modern era. That's what coaches are going to recruit at, negatively or not. I mean, until Nick Saban leaves, and that's what we haven't really seen a coach from a playoff team leave, except for Bob Stoops, but that was in-house. And then Urban Meyer turned off to Ryan Day in-house. We haven't seen a team have a coach just leave and then bring in someone from the outside that's been in the playoffs, right?
Well, even Ogeron was technically in-house, and Dabo took over as interim.
That was. I'm thinking like in the playoff era, though. Like, which teams have been in the playoffs and had a coaching change and got back to the playoffs that wasn't in-house? Oregon fell off the map. Florida State fell off the map. Who else? Ohio State, in-house to Ryan Day, made the playoffs. Or Oklahoma, in-house to Lincoln Riley, made the playoffs again. Then you have Clemson and Alabama. That's really, really it. You haven't had a playoff team take that jump. What will happen if Nick Saban retires? Do they get Dabo? What happens to Clemson at that point? Do they completely fall off the map? Do they try to just promote Venables? I don't know. But we haven't had a playoff that long to know, and I'm hoping that they take care of it and just make it at least an 18 playoff. If they go to 6, it's going to be just as dumb. Because you're going to be like, oh, 2 teams get a bye, and why? Like, why would, like, looking at this year, why would Ohio State have deserved a bye this year?
Because that's what the voters said.
That's what the voters said, and no other reason. They end up losing. So Clemson would have had to play one other game. They might not have upset Ohio State then, if you even call it an upset, and then you have a whole different playoff. Last thing, do you have anything else on the bowl games?
Nope.
Got anything for the final bell?
Check out southboundsports.com. Got a lot of good links on there that you can click on and explore and help support the show.
Yeah, definitely check that out. We're going to try to get some new stuff up for the XFL season. Steelers are out of the playoffs, so we don't have a lot of NFL stuff. We'll be hitting on it, though. Keep an eye on Tom Brady. We should have a Tom Brady tracker. That way, whenever he signs with Pittsburgh, you can say that you heard it here first. But then, whenever he signs back with New England and they win the Super Bowl next year, you'll know that that was just meant to happen. Destiny. All right. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.